Hi, I'm Colleen Trussler, the Cool Crone, and welcome back to my channel. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who watched my video and subscribed, and a really big shout out to Jen West of Lipstick Legion Craft, who sent a bunch of her followers over to watch, and a bunch of them subscribed too. Thank you so much, Jen. A million times thank you. The first thing we're going to talk about today is Mars in Aries as of the end of June, June 28th. Mars in the sign of Aries is where Mars loves to be. Aries is ruled by Mars, and the energy flows great when it's in the sign of Mars. But we have a lot of planets in Capricorn, which Mars is squaring. So Mars is a little agitated in Aries. Plus, Mars is conjunct a planet called Eris, which is the goddess of disruption and chaos. Eris is a dwarf planet that orbits in the Kuiper belt and is linked to people taking to the streets and general discord and chaos. So Eris and Mars are running square to Pluto until quite some time. Eris itself is squaring Pluto until October 2021. Mars, of course, will change signs towards the end of the year, so Mars will only be in square to Pluto for a little while. But Mars energizes this square between Eris and Pluto. So you've got Pluto, destruction, and Eris, discord and chaos. Not a great combination. But Mars in Aries, it doesn't have to be violent. It can also be a youthful, strong energy. Mars does rule the military and war and guns and knives and things like that. But it is also youthful and hopeful and vigorous. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be just awful violence in the streets. It can also be just a lot of energy being put forth by the American people in the streets. The North and South Node are also involved with this eclipse. Transiting Neptune is squaring the North Node in Gemini on the day of the eclipse. This aspect actually comes exact in January of next year, but the nodes move slow and Neptune moves even slower, so we are feeling it now. Gemini rules communication and things like social media, marketing, talking, speaking, writing, getting things out there, and learning. Now, the North Node is always opposite the South Node, and so the opposite sign of Gemini is Sagittarius, and that's where the South Node is. So transiting Neptune is also squaring the South Node. And in this case, Gemini, the North Node, and Sagittarius, the South Node, is representing the old world and the new world. So the new world is being represented by Gemini, the youth, moving forward, new ideas, and quick changing ideas. And the old world is being represented by Sagittarius, so old ideas, old world ideas, tried and true ideas. These don't mix. Now Neptune is illusion, delusion, fantasy, fog, dissolving. So what's going to happen is all through this period of time, and it's right around now till January of 2021, it will be difficult to know what to believe. It will be difficult in the media to understand whether something is true or not. Things that are true will seem like they're not. Things that are not true will seem like they're true. And people will be very, very confused. So it's a difficult time for media. It's a difficult time probably for journalists who are trying to tell the truth. And it's a difficult time for the American people because we're just plain confused. So you're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about Mercury in Cancer retrograde. Mercury is sitting at about 8 degrees of Cancer retrograde right now. On July 12th, it's going to go direct, and it'll start moving back out through Cancer and stop going backwards. When Mercury is retrograde, you know you shouldn't start things, you shouldn't initiate things, you shouldn't buy electronics, and certainly not buy a computer. However, Mercury retrograde in Cancer is like standing in water up to your neck and trying to run. First of all, it's going to be hard to run. And second of all, you're not going to get anywhere. Well, you're in water, so where are you going anyway? But the best way to handle Mercury in Cancer retrograde is to surrender to its energies. So use it for the normal Mercury retrograde things. Use it for a time of analysis, of preparation, of reviewing, revising, repairing, redoing things. But don't try to start things. And certainly don't try to convince anybody else of anything or confront authority or anything like that. You're just going to get nowhere. Just surrender to the Mercury Cancer energy and then just lie back and float. It's the best use of the energy. Listen to your dreams, listen to your intuition, write them down, plan and prepare for what you're going to do after Mercury is direct. That's the best use of the energy. Mars is in Aries, which we talked about already, and Mercury is retrograde in Cancer until July 12th. So Mars squaring Mercury is not a happy time. Angry words, people's feelings getting hurt, people being more sensitive to angry words than usual. So with all the people protesting and people trying to stop them from protesting, you're going to hear a lot of conflict and maybe even some violence coming along with it. It's what Mars is built to do. Mercury doesn't want the conflict, but Mercury is very sensitive in Cancer. Also, the Capricorn planets are opposing Mercury and squaring Mars at this time, so that brings even more tension to this whole situation. The Capricorn planets are looking for changing things long term, whereas Mercury and Mars are more immediate, more in the moment. Nevertheless, sensitive, angry, not really a good combination. So I would be careful about being out with protesting groups. I would make sure that you have all of your bases covered and you know all the ABCs of doing protests. Don't make it your first time between 4th of July and July 12th. It's not a good time for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing to be out there in the streets, because it's very possible that there will be violence. Okay, I want to talk about two planets that are in Capricorn right now, Saturn and Jupiter. So in January 2019, Saturn came through asking you to make choices and commitments in a specific area of your life. And it's going to be found in your chart wherever there is Capricorn. Saturn will be retrograde until the end of September. So it went a little bit into Aquarius and now it's scooting back into Capricorn, but it's moving very, very slow. So it's really going to be sitting on those Capricorn degrees for a little while until the end of September. Then it'll move forward again, back through those Capricorn degrees and into Aquarius. So you're going to feel this emphasis on this area of your chart very much. Plus, Pluto has been sitting in Capricorn since, well, forever, since like 2008. And Pluto is also really making you focus on your mission in life. So between Saturn and Pluto, you probably feel like you're being forced to look at these things. At the very least, you're going to be feeling compelled to look at this area of your life. So it's very important. Now, in February 2020, Jupiter came along to Capricorn and also said, yes, I want you to make a commitment. But what Jupiter did is it gave you opportunities. It gave you inspiration. It gave you gifts. It made you feel lighter and more buoyant and happier and lucky in that area of your life. So Jupiter, since February 2020, has been making it much easier for you to embrace whatever it is that you need to commit to that Saturn was so heavy-handedly asking you to commit to since 2019. Saturn is at 29 degrees Capricorn. Been there before this year, but it's there again. And the 29th degree, also known as the anaretic degree, means that something is coming to culmination. Something is coming to an end. Now, I don't want you to think it's like, you know, every reading where they're saying, oh, you got to let this go, or this is the end of something, just move on. It isn't that kind of ending. Think of it more as a graduation. When you graduate high school, you've taken classes, you've done all the work, you've met all your requirements, and now the teachers, the principal, everybody is saying, okay, you can graduate now and say you're a high school graduate and you can move on. Most people don't want to stay in high school their whole life. Think of this in the same way. You probably don't want to stay in this whatever it is for the rest of your life. It probably is much healthier for you to graduate or culminate and move on. And that's what Saturn is asking you to do. Now, Pluto might be another issue, but Saturn is asking you to culminate and then move on. And once you do, Saturn will give you rewards, a lot like Jupiter will, but Saturn has made you work a lot harder for them. Now I'd like to talk about a couple of other planets that are affecting this eclipse. One is the dwarf planet Haumea, and one is a fixed star. So let's talk about the dwarf planet first. Again, dwarf planets exist in the Kuiper belt. You can Google that and find out what it is, but they're small planets, very small planets. However, since the discovery of these planets, we have noticed a lot of emphasis on more divine feminine energy, because these planets, by and large, have been associated with goddesses that are feminine. So, Haumea is a really interesting planet. It's actually egg-shaped, and the goddess Haumea actually has to do with fertility. That's kind of cool. Anyway, Haumea is at 27 degrees of Libra, and it is opposing Eris, right? Remember the dwarf planet that is disruption and chaos? So they're standing across the sky from each other at this moment. And both of those planets are squaring the Capricorn planets. So Haumea's archetype is fertility. Obviously, the planet is egg-shaped, but she can birth children from any part of her body. So how cool is that, right? She's birthing children just from her arm if she wants to. That's pretty cool. She can regenerate from an old woman to a maiden and back again if she wants to. So she is a regenerative goddess, not just fertility, but regeneration, a lot like Pluto, but without the anger. Also, she is a goddess that uses magic to produce food and to make food grow. So we also have an emphasis not only of the divine feminine and regeneration and fertility in this eclipse, but we also have an emphasis on nourishment, on how we nourish ourselves and our food industry. So this eclipse is tying all these issues together that the United States is really suffering through at the moment. It hasn't missed any of those key issues at all. So the Capricorn energy of structure and government is going to have a strong feminine overtone that will try to regenerate and nurture and remind us of what's important. Now, also during this lunar eclipse, we have the star Sirius opposing the whole eclipse. Now, Sirius is associated with ancient Egypt and the River Nile. It's also the brightest star in the sky and the closest star to our planet. So it represents also agriculture, regeneration like the River Nile, and food in general. But Sirius is very closely associated with Isis, who of course resurrected her brother. So Isis and Sirius are connected to renewal, rebirth, and, let's be honest, necromancy. So I don't think that anybody's going to be raising the dead anytime soon, but this theme of regeneration, of bringing things back, of letting things go that have outlived their usefulness, and the divine feminine overseeing the whole thing, you can see it's not just one or two planets, it's a whole bunch of planets that are saying pretty much the same thing. They're helping Pluto, they're tempering Pluto, so that Pluto isn't just this mass destruction, just this like nuclear winter that levels everything. It's saying, no, we have to do this somewhat carefully, and while we're doing it, we will help people, we will help humanity. So, like I said, it's not going to be the same eclipse as 1963. It's going to be a very different eclipse, but it is profound, and it's going to affect us deeply. I want to talk now about past eclipses that have affected the U.S. chart. So the path of this eclipse is going over North America and the United States. There was an eclipse in 1963, also at 14 degrees Capricorn, that also went over North America and the United States. And this eclipse had a profound effect upon the United States. In August, on August 28th of 1963, Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. That was a rock the world moment. I think even people who weren't alive then know about this speech. It was so impactful on humanity, not just the United States. And then later in the year, November 22nd of 1963, in the morning, there was a broadcast on CBS to introduce the Beatles to the United States. And that was pretty earth-shaking. That was a pretty monumental moment. And they were supposed to repeat the broadcast in the afternoon, but all news on all stations were interrupted to bring us the information that John F. Kennedy had been assassinated in Dallas that day. That also really rocked the world, not just the United States. So this eclipse at 14 degrees Capricorn, happening on July 5th at 12:44 a.m., we may not have earth-shaking things happening on July 5th. We probably won't. We will probably have really amazing headlines, but we're not going to have an assassination or, some big earth-shaking event that day. But when the planets cross over that eclipse point, we will have some kind of earth-shaking event. Some monumental event will take place. So when is that going to be? In December, Mercury will cross over the eclipse point, December 27th. So right in between Christmas and New Year's, something big is going to hit the news. And it will harken back, it will echo back to this eclipse. So it will have something to do with all the things that we've been talking about. Then in the first week of January, the sun will hit that point in Capricorn. And we will also have even more. And I think that moment with the sun shining its light on everything that probably should have been talked about this month, July of 2020, I think that will be an even bigger moment where a lot more information is revealed or something wonderful happens, but it's gonna be profound then too. The best one is, though, on Inauguration Day of January 2021, Venus will hit the eclipse point. So this ensures that that inauguration is going to be one of the happiest moments this country has ever seen. There'll be parties and happiness and joy and love and support, and everyone will feel really, really, really happy. Also, Venus is a feminine planet. So this also speaks to tremendous feminine energy overseeing the entire proceeding of the inauguration, which really makes me feel good because we have the dwarf planets bringing in all of this divine energy at the time of the eclipse, and you will see it echoed in the inauguration when Venus shines her light over the whole inauguration. So that's going to be very, very exciting. So in my last video, I talked quite a bit about the Pluto natal return of this country's chart. So this natal return won't happen exact for a couple of years, but we are feeling the effects of Pluto right now, hitting the place where it was when this country was born. But Pluto also has been acting as a kind of herald to foreshadow this particular eclipse. Pluto hit this eclipse degree 3 times in 2015, and each time it kind of foreshadowed what is going on now and what's going to be going on as a result of this eclipse. So let's investigate these. So in January of 2015, Pluto hits 14 degrees of Capricorn, and Oklahoma carries out its first execution since the botched lethal injection in 2014. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but that botched lethal injection in 2014 was due to the fact that the Oklahoma prison system had expired medications for the injection. So that isn't exactly like what we're dealing with now with like COVID-19 and, you know, trying to get medicines to use for that. But it does have to do with medicines, and it has to do with death. Another event that happened in January of 2015 is in New York City. Mayor de Blasio and the police unions are really down in the polls. Everybody's really down on the police, and they're really down on Mayor de Blasio. And the reason is that either the police or the police unions had been caught on camera, or they were recorded saying some really, really nasty racial remarks. And when it was discovered and brought to light, Mayor de Blasio defended them. He did not denounce those remarks. And so both the police union and de Blasio just plummeted in approval ratings. Kind of sounds like things that are happening right now. And then the next thing that I saw in the news was when 12 people were killed at a newspaper office in Paris, and ISIS claimed responsibility for the bombing. It was, the building, I believe, was bombed. This was nasty. This was really, really a nasty, nasty attack. And again, that's Pluto. Pluto is utter destruction. Pluto also rules terrorism. So, in July of 2015, I love this one. South Carolina removes the Confederate flag from the State House. That's exactly what's going on now. People are trying to remove all that Confederate stuff. So, you know, Pluto foreshadowed this in 2015. Another thing that happened in July 2015, a gunman opened fire in a Louisiana movie house. That was crazy. Oh, no, wait, not Louisiana, in LA. I'm sorry. I saw the LA. I thought it was Louisiana. It was actually Los Angeles. Excuse me. And the last thing, and I love this one, is in July 2015, the Boy Scouts ended their ban on openly gay adults being troop leaders. That's kind of cool. But probably the last time we saw something like that happen in 2015. Now in November of 2015, the Paris attacks from that were claimed by ISIS on the newspaper people prompted our Congress to try and impose a travel ban and to put through legislation saying that they should be tougher on refugee screening, especially when it came to people from Syria. So I don't know if that went through or not, but that's what they were trying to get through in Congress at that time. And then in Chicago, there were protests over body cam footage that was brought to light and released to the public and found and documented the murder of Laquan McDonald, who was a young black man. So all of these things, I think, touch on what's going on right now in the United States, and this was all foreshadowed by Pluto. Pluto will perfect its natal return in 2022. Pluto is power, destruction, transformation, and purging. A lot of astrologers refer to Pluto as the plow. It digs up things that have been hidden from the light and exposes them to the light. And then it's up to us to decide whether to keep it or throw it away or destroy it. In most cases, these things that it digs up have outlived their usefulness. And so there's no reason to keep them around. But there's a good reason to either replace them or do without. Now Pluto is conjunct Jupiter at 23, 24 degrees of Capricorn, and they're both retrograde. Retrograde is for the slow-moving planets. Unlike Mercury, retrogrades for these planets represent internal power. So it's the way that you're being affected by Jupiter and Pluto retrograde. Wherever Capricorn is in your chart, that's where these planets are operating. And they are not only asking you to make commitments and choice, but they are also helping you to understand your own power, your own sense of power, your own sense of authority. So that it's a very internal process. Jupiter and Saturn are helping you to develop this sense of mission, sense of purpose, and what your work really means in the world. But it might not be as far as your career goes. I mean, Capricorn usually does rule the career, but not everybody has Capricorn in the 10th house, which is career, right? So wherever Capricorn is in your chart, that's where you're going to feel this undeniable commitment and passion and need to do this work. And this energy from Saturn and Jupiter will be combined with Pluto until the end of July. Okay. Ending cycles. This is the end of a cycle. You're breaking something up, you're closing it out, you're completing the cycle. And it's focused on the area of your life where you have been developing for the past 5 years. You've been transforming and shifting this portion of your life in a powerful way, but you may not feel like you are done. So Pluto, as I said before, in 2015 was in Capricorn at 14 degrees. For most of the year, 14, 15 degrees. So that particular area of your chart has been in focus for 5 years. It just is. This is a big life change. This is a big shift in this portion of your life in such a way that you have not experienced probably in your lifetime. Honor your own power and mastery. Once you do that, once you know that you've really, like I said, graduated, think of it like graduating from high school. Once you do that, Pluto and Saturn will grant you the gifts that you've earned. And that's not what it's all about. You're not doing it for the gifts. You're doing it for yourself to move on and to grow up, frankly, to mature. Also, this is a time to master our own frequency. Most people are thinking of, I'm trying to raise my vibration. I'm trying to move into higher realms. And this is the time that gives you the power to do that. We have a lot of planets at the end of Capricorn. The last decan, or last 10 degrees of Capricorn, is all about mastery. So use this energy. And it's not over with the eclipse. This energy is going to be in your neighborhood, as it were, for quite some time. Pluto's going to be there all through up until 2022. So you've got plenty of time to do it if it isn't already happening for you now. But honor that. Honor wherever you're at, whatever you need to do to culminate with that energy. Allow yourself to do it. As with every full moon, you have the opportunity to finish. A full moon is always the culmination of at least a month's worth of energy and work. This full moon in Capricorn is softened by the Cancer energy and focuses on how you really feel. You may feel tired emotionally or drained. You may need to rest and balance. You may need to feel emotional truth. You may need time to move through something. You may need to take care of yourself and also your family. Whatever you need to do on this full moon, be aware that doing it and moving on to the next step will bring you great rewards. Best of luck with this full moon eclipse.